You let me know, girl. We're good to go? All right, call the meeting to order. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Today, I see Councillor John Walsh is not going to be with us today, so Councillor Tessier, Councillor Aker will handle his committee duties. The first thing, of course, is the agenda as it is presented. I have one item, actually, that I see from the Public Works Committee for outside to add to the agenda. Are there any other items that have to be added to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll accept a motion. Moved by Councillor Tessier, seconded by Deputy Mayor Locke. All those in favour? Contrary minded? Motion carried. From the agenda then, first will be the minutes and the action report of the public meeting of May 15th. We'll accept a motion on the minutes as presented. Moved by Councillor Ledwell, seconded by Councillor Stoyles. Any errors or omissions? Errors or omissions only. Hearing that they are 110% perfect, we will call the question. All those in favor? Contrary-minded? Motion is carried. Business arising from the minutes of May 15th. Councillor Stoyles, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Worship. 322.
I'm sorry, give me the number again.
Number 322.
322.
And it's the Avery Place,
Yes.
is under experimental farm.
Yes.
Just wanted to inform the public, I guess, that the staff have met with the residents on Avery Place, and they're going to be doing some further investigation, and they had a long meeting with them and heard from their concerns and that, and I just wanted to let council know that it's been in the works and further action is.
Did we ever find out what happened?
Well, they're investigating now to see, they wanted to meet with the residents first to see what the kind of odor and how long it's been going on for and all that has happened. So basically now in investigation they're going to be doing more work into it, and they're going to be meeting with the farms. And
it wasn't the experimental farm.
We don't know 100% for sure
it
yet,
was,
because in talking to Stefan,
we don't know.
In talking to Stefan, he said that they're doing some more investigation and meeting with the people and having more chats, more talks.
Because I know there's always a season for this.
I just wanted to let people know that it has been worked on, and the staff have already met with all the residents down there who had any concerns.
Okay. Any other comment on it? Hearing none. Any other business arising? Again, this is from the meeting of May 15th. Any other business arising? Hearing none, we will move along. Council, why is this doing this to me today? Council, we have just one proclamation today. Most of you would have it. It was downloaded in the Dropbox. There's no one here to speak to it today. It is a municipal proclamation entitled Just for the Fun of It, June is Recreation Month. I will dispense, therefore, without guest here to address it, the whereases and read into the record the actual resolution itself. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Mount Pearl does hereby proclaim that June, which witnesses the greening of Newfoundland and Labrador and serves as a significant gateway to family activities, has been designated as Recreation Month. we all quit, which, for the summer at least.
That's right.
Which will annually recognize and celebrate the benefits derived year-round from quality public and private recreation and parks resources at the local, regional, and provincial levels. Therefore, our community, in recognition of the benefits and values that recreation, parks, and leisure services provide, to hereby designate the month of June as Recreation Month, to which I shall affix my signature and invite any members of council, if they wish to address it at all, to feel free to do so. Councillor Stoyles.
I just wanted to say about the new challenge that Recreation Newfoundland and Labrador has on the go. It starts May 1st, and I mentioned it at the last meeing, and there's a website.
May 1st, June 1st.
June 1st, and there's a website and everything, the same thing, www.smalltownsbigresults.net, and they're encouraging towns, small steps, big results anyway. They're encouraging more people to get involved in towns and councillors to get involved again.
In
so
what?
I just
Doing what this time?
As an activity, as a community event.
Oh, just doing community activities.
Community. The more people you get involved in the community, it's not going to be to win anything like they did last time.
Right.
It's more for community involvement, and they're going to be giving prizes away and things like that.
Okay. Very good. What? Port Hope Simpson got everything wrapped up anyway. The whole town shows up. They get 100%. Okay, very good. We're ready to move to committee reports, and the very first committee that I have on the docket today is Public Works. So Councillor Tessier, in Councillor Walsh's absence, if you would.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item on our agenda today
has to do with household hazardous waste. We're holding our annual Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day on June the 9th. It's going to take place at the depot from 8 until 4. And of course, we're encouraging residents to come out and bring out any household hazardous waste items that they have that are not safe to dispose of in your daily garbage, to bring it up to the depot so that we can ensure that it's disposed of in an environmentally friendly and safe manner, of course. And of course, we don't want those items to end up in our landfill.
Absolutely. Do we, just as a question, I don't know, Councillor, whether you can answer it or not, do we attempt in any way to identify who's coming, who's in the lineup? We don't know whether
No.
they're Mount Pearlers,
Nope.
whether they're from St. John's, Paradise, CBS, whatever.
No,
Should
we
we
have
do
no
that? Would we want to do that? Would we like to know how, not how much we actually collect, but how much of it is actually coming from our community? That's not to say that I'm not the least bit concerned that people from outside the community utilize it. Feel free. It keeps waste out of the landfill. It's good. But wouldn't it be nice to know that, you know, at least 50% of what we're collecting is coming out of Mount Pearl?
It's not something that we've done, and I don't know how much it would slow the process or deter people, because ultimately we want to make sure that anything that is of hazardous material is
is
disposed of
collected,
properly.
absolutely, yeah.
But I mean, it's something that we can certainly gauge this year. We can have a look at it and maybe do a random check just to see. I'm not sure. It's not
I mean,
something
it's
we've
not,
discussed
you know,
yet.
like I said, I don't really care who's using it. That's, it's, you know, but it would be nice to know how much of this is actually coming from our own community and how engaged, not how engaged the region is in this waste day, but how engaged our community is in this waste day, because it does cost us a substantial amount of money to
Yeah, it costs
put
me
it together.
$15,000.
About
CBS and
15,000.
Paradise does their own as well.
They do their own as well, and
they
I'm
do
sure
their own as well.
some of our residents probably utilize that one. You know, it's not an issue.
Man, as long as it stays out of the landfill.
That's the most
I mean,
important.
ultimately, I mean, we also want to remind the
And the
residents. We want to remind the residents that there is a drop-off as well at the Robin Hood Bay facility.
Yeah, for any other time.
For any
feel
other
free.
time, recognizing, of course, that that might be inconvenient when you only have a few small things that you want to dispose of safely. So that is still there, but this day, on this particular day, June the 9th, we're happy to offer that service to our residents again.
That's wonderful.
And of course, the paint is something separate. They got the new
Yes, paint is new.
recycling on the go as well, so.
Yep. Okay.
The next, sorry, are we ready?
Yep.
The next item has to do with our bulk garbage collection. The program's been ongoing, of course, throughout the city. We only have, I think, one more left for this particular cycle of bulk garbage. We're having some non-compliance issues, and we need to bring it to the attention of the public that there are certain things that cannot be picked up by our bulk garbage collectors. What we're seeing now is that we're having some very large tree stumps that are being left, some large tree branches, large bundles of tree branches. Well, I don't mean bundles in bundled, organized, I mean big piles of tree branches, and construction and renovation waste, for example, fences and patio debris. Our regulations are very clearly stated on the website, and I know that we also had a booklet delivered to households as well earlier this year stating what we do and don't take. We actually will take branches, we will take some tree stumps, but they have to be cut. They have to be cut so that they're safe for our employees to pick up. Tree branches have to be bundled in specific lengths as well. Having a big mass pile of branches is not safe for our employees. It's very unorganized, chaotic, branches sticking out everywhere, and it'll also slow them down tremendously as well. And of course, with construction material, anything that has nails sticking out of it is very dangerous. Lengths of fences, we don't take that. It all needs to be broken down, it all needs to be safe, all the nails need to be removed. So we just want to remind the residents that, you know, if they're unsure about what our regulations are, unsure about what we take, by all means, look online, refer to the booklet, or if you don't have either, you can certainly give us a call, and we'll be happy to tell people as well.
Should we, again, asking questions, I suppose, you know, but again, our constant quest to improve service. When our municipal enforcement is driving around the streets and we have a bulk garbage area and people got stuff out, would it be worth our while if they were sufficiently trained in this to have a look at it and be able to knock on the door and say, you know, Mr. Smith, Mr. Jones, by the way, you know, we're not going to take that tomorrow because it's not, you need to take the nails out of it or you need to bundle it. Would that help us any, I wonder?
I think it actually would. It actually would.
Would they have time to be doing that though? I mean, they got.
I think so, as
If they're
opposed to
doing a
giving out
drive.
tickets. Why not?
If they're doing a drive
They're
around,
drive-by,
why
they're
not?
doing the drive-by, I don't see why we couldn't. That to me is a significant role.
Yeah, that's right. So that's actually, for that, you know, for that matter, maybe that's a matter of communication between Public Works and Community Services to have that discussion so that if they do see something that's obvious, that's put out for bulk garbage, that is going to pose a risk to our employees.
Yeah,
or
because
that
I do
we know
believe
is
it's,
going
I
to
do
be
believe
left.
it's, I do believe it's one of us seven, or all of us who get the call from the annoyed taxpayer who says they came by and they didn't pick up So if it's possible for us to actually
Prevent
tap
that.
on the door and say,
Yeah.
hey, Mr. Smith, they're not going to take that in the morning,
Yeah.
that might help us in that
Well, that's
regard.
That's just it, because it either puts our employees at risk, which is what we don't want,
Absolutely.
or we have to leave it, and then the resident is left to deal with taking everything back in again.
There
We don't
you
want
go.
that either.
I have
So,
a-
Mr.
I
Collins, there's something for community services to consider.
I have a comment to make.
Councillor
not,
Stiles?
not relating to that, but maybe this is the right time to make it, is the thing that irks, I'm going to say me, not me as much, but several of my neighbours this past week, because we're doing bulk garbage in my neighbourhood this week. And what bothers, I was chatting with 2 or 3 neighbours the past few nights, and is the people who comes around and opens up, we put a new TV out, and they opened up the TV and took whatever was good and that they can sell, metal or whatever it was, and just left it there. They came, one of the neighbours had an old stove out. They opened it up, they took the fuses out, they bed it up and took whatever they could take out of a good, right in front of them, and then goes off in the truck and leaves the biggest mess around. And then it's like the neighbour on it, and one guy had a couple of heaters out. They actually opened up the 3 heaters, took the parts out the heaters or whatever they took out the heaters, and it was just left everywhere. And the neighbours were there saying, what just happened? Is it my place to say to him, and one guy did say to him, you can't leave a mess like that. I had that all tidied. And he said, I'm not tidying again. Of course, he just kept on going, right? But I mean, it's not very good when people take the time and put their stuff out and tidy it all up and have their heaters. This one guy had his 3 heaters tidied up and put together, and they tore it all up and took whatever. I guess they can sell for scrap. I don't know what they were
Of
taking.
course they can.
I can,
To your
That's
to
ridiculous.
your point, then I'm gonna suggest that point is a good one. Let's bounce it back to community
Yeah.
services for a little review. Some kind of scavenger bylaw might be appropriate.
Well, and the other side of it is
given
if
that
you
kind
don't,
of mess actually does end up happening.
If
I've
you
se-
don't-
I've
yeah.
seen it. I've
Well,
witnessed it
happened
as well.
on my
but if you
street,
don't want the confrontation between the resident and the person who's doing it, this is a very specific small pocket of individuals that are going to go and take things apart, I think, and leave a mess. I wonder if, and this is something that we'll have to investigate with community services as well, with our municipal enforcement, I wonder if we can't just take a license plate number of the vehicle that's doing it. If they're there long enough to take something apart, surely they're there long enough to take a plate number.
Possibly, yes.
Oh, the truck was on the street
Yeah,
for
well, if we had a bylaw, and, if we had a bylaw that could be enforced, it might be a worthwhile exercise. Deputy Mayor?
I just have a question because Councillor Tessier mentioned stumps. I had a call from a resident who put out a stump, and I notice here it's up to 50 pounds. If you've got waste that's 50 pounds, is that something that's picked up by a piece of equipment, Mr. Rantle, or is that something that 2 workers would heave into the truck? And if you've got equipment going around to pick up, heavy branches, is there any harm with, I understand building materials, because I saw someone throwing out reams of paneling board and stuff like that I knew wasn't going to be picked up. But you're picking up branches. This stump, and this guy said, it was probably 300 pounds. It came down, whatever, so he got it out. If the machine got to go around and pick up the branches, is there any harm with picking up a stump? If the machine is out and about anyways,
Deputy Mayor Ock, yes. The number that we try to use with a threshold is 50 pounds, so they can reasonably, when we go out with the rear loaders, is what we're using to actually pick up most of the bulk garbage. When there's days that we have the furniture and the hot water tanks and the metals, that's when we'll go out with our parade of our dump trucks and our loader, and we'll pick up the heavy material that way. If there's those stumps that are there, if they can reasonably, 2 guys can pick it up without damaging, say, or risking their cuts in their hands, they'll try to pick that up. If the residents can cut them down to something that's manageable to lift, they'll try to lift those up. If there's days we're out there with the loaders and it's mixed into the pile, sometimes they can push that into the loader. But generally speaking, we don't try to get out and mix up the inconsistency of tree stumps on some days and tree stumps not on other days. So we're trying to be clear that the tree stump, we're trying to generally keep it to the 50-pound mark. The
So
other heavier,
cut it down into 4
cut it down
50-pound
to something
pieces.
that's manageable to the 50-pound mark, roughly. But when you put out the furniture and the Chesterfields and all those things that are greater than 50 pounds, again, we'll try to take those in the back of the rear loader with 2 guys. Or it's when the dump trucks go out on the metals day and are actually trying to pick it all up and the loader goes out there.
In the event that they can't cut it down, this guy said this thing was massive, and there was rocks within it. I tried to saw it up, tore the heck out of my chainsaw, So he said, there's no way. So I suggested they call the city and there'd be a fee, I think, of $45. Would our crews
Correct.
then come and pick that up?
Generally, no. Generally, no. They won't come and pick up. It's just
so what, we
too
got a
big.
bonfire
The
or
only
so what?
solution that we advise people is to contact a private sector garbage collector, and they'll come out and they'll do whatever they feel is necessary to actually get it up into a garbage truck and bring it to Robin Bay or wherever they want to bring it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tessier?
And we have one more item outside of the kit. Engineering has completed its evaluation of the request for proposals for the Ruth Avenue School District traffic study. And it's their recommendation that the City of Mount Pearl award the contract for the aforementioned study to Hatch Mott McDonald for a total cost of $31,188. That includes HST. This has also been discussed with the Eastern School District, and they agree with it. So we are recommending that we go ahead with this as recommended. And I so move.
It is moved, seconded by Councillor Aker. Question or comment? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried.
And of course, as we know, that traffic study has to do with some of the traffic congestion that we're experiencing along Ruth Avenue because of the close proximity of the schools.
To the schools.
Yes,
Councillor Tessier, that concludes Public Works.
It does.
Community Services is next. You might as well just keep on rocking and rolling.
Absolutely. The committee is recommending the release of $10,000 for the staff costs associated with the grounds maintenance to the Admiralty House Board of Management. This, of course, is an annual expenditure for us, and I so move.
Moved, seconded by Deputy Mayor Locke. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
Next item, we have an update from the Mount Pearl Marlins. Actually, they're really good at doing that, and I wish that more sporting groups would do that, of course, within the city of Mount Pearl, because it gives us an opportunity at council to extend our congratulations. And this week, there was a meet in Gander on the weekend of May 5th, and we want to highlight some of the swimmers that did quite well. Zachary Costigan took first place. Hannah Lewis took first place. Emily Morgan took second. Emma Holden second. Rachel Legg took second place, and Caitlin Gatherall took third place. And this is just to let everybody know and give us an opportunity to brag about the absolutely fabulous swimmers that we
How
have
good are we going to be with a
representing
new pool? A top.
us. I'm telling you.
What?
I'm
How good are we
telling
going to be with a new pool?
I'm
Wow.
telling you. Well, I mean, again, it's all about your personal best, but it's awfully good when you can also place. It's going to be a fast pool. It's going to be a fast pool. We'll make sure the water is just a smidgen colder, so they got to move a little faster to stay warm. For the information of the public, the Summer 2012 Activity Guide has been distributed. It's available also in city facilities. The general program registration for residents will take place on Monday, May 28th, which is yesterday, and non-residents will begin on May 31st. So, of course, we'll encourage any resident who wants to avail of those services to absolutely do so. And that is it for community services.
Thank you very much, Councillor. We are up to Corporate Services Committee. Deputy Mayor Locke.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item here has to do with a couple of uncollectible accounts that must be written off. We recommend approval to write off the balance and remove these two accounts from the city records. It's noticed that businesses have closed and all collection efforts have been exhausted, so we're moving to write off these accounts, and I so move.
It is moved and seconded by Councillor Aker. Question or comment? All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
The next item, Your Worship, are the invoices for our approval. There are 14 outlined there. They total $299,576.20, and I move that these amounts be accepted as presented.
Moved and seconded. Question or comment on any of these are listed items 9 through 14? Am I looking at that right? Got to be more than that. That's right, 1 through to 14.
Yeah, 1 to 8 on the previous page. Your
I
Worship.
got it here now.
Question.
Any question on any of them?
What is number 8?
Number 8, Onyx Enterprises Solution.
That was the IT. Yep, sorry.
Virtualizations.
Server.
Mr. Silver.
Basically, that's a project that Rick is undertaking with our IT manager is undertaking, of course, with our servers. And virtualization is something that basically they're undertaking to minimize the number of servers we're actually required to run city IT infrastructure.
Okay.
And it's, well, best I can say is IT jargon to cover what that process will be. But what it really means is that the way the servers will be working is that some will be virtualized, so they won't be physically existing, but we'll be using less in numbers.
At the risk of getting too involved in that, will there still be an ability to back up with those virtual servers?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, no different than now.
cool.
Virtual backups.
Virtual backups.
Your Worship, sorry, Deputy Mayor.
I'm sorry, Councillor Aker.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I see an environmental study, 141 Glencoe. I'm not familiar with that. Would you be able to, Director, give us an explanation?
That AMEC Environmental,
Number one.
that's the study for the leased snow dump, and that was for a baseline service or assessment so that we could determine there was no contaminants pre-existing in that site prior to us starting to use it for snow dump.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor? Call the question on that, I guess we should. All
Yep.
those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carried.
The next item is a request from our worship to attend the Urban Municipalities Committee meeting in Marystown, June 15th and 16th, and I so move.
Moved, seconded, all in favor? Contrary minded, carried.
The next couple of items, Your Worship, are information. It's the Municipal Assessment Agency newsletter. The city's in receipt of that, and I'm just tabling this for the information of council. I'm not sure if it was placed in the Dropbox, but it is available for any council members that wish to see it. The second is also related to the Municipal Assessment Agency, and this has to do with the Claire Simmons Scholarship Award. And this award is granted each year in memory of Claire Simmons, who was the business manager with the Municipal Assessments Agency with an untimely death in 2004. It's open to students graduating high school based on a number of their public exam results. It is available to the children, grandchildren of any municipal councillors, any employees, or retirees of any of the communities that are serviced by the agency. As it's indicated there, staff are made aware of the scholarships through email by placing brochures in various lunchrooms and other locations. And of course, the public is aware of this information on the city's website. And the last item for me, Your Worship, has to do with Steps for Life. The committee was advised that on May the 6th, the annual Steps for Life, which is walking for victims of workplace tragedy, was held. It's a 5K fundraising walk, and the purpose of this is to support families of people who suffered workplace tragedy. It's the primary fundraising event that funds Threads for Life, and this is a national registered charity that's dedicated to supporting families of workplace tragedies. It's traditionally held on the first Sunday in May as a part of North American Occupational Safety and Health Week, and of course this was from May the 6th to 11th of this year. Some of our city employees participated in the walk. The city paid the registration fee, and we're happy to say that the employees raised over $300 to support this event. So
Good
I just
for them.
hats off to these employees, and I just brought that forward for the information of council.
Thank you,
And
sir.
that's it for me, Your Worship.
Thank you, sir, very much. Engineering Services, Councillor Ledwell.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on our agenda this evening is to do with the city's water conservation order. Just a reminder to residents that the conservation order is in effect throughout the year. Residents are reminded the watering times are restricted to 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., 2 days per week. The even-numbered houses are assigned for watering on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and the odd numbers on Wednesdays and Sundays. Of course, hand watering with flower gardens and vegetable gardens can be done with a can or a hose that has an automatic shut-off nozzle. That's permitted at any time. New lawns are exempt from the policy for 60 days. If residents need information, they can certainly call Engineering Services at 748-1018 or email engineeringservices@mountpearl.ca. That's just a little public service announcement.
All right, a question, Deputy Mayor?
I just noticed here in the water conservation order, under point 6, it says washing of parking lots is prohibited. Now, parking lots, does that entail or include driveways? I'm just curious about that, because that's one thing that really gets my dander up when I see people washing their paved driveways on residential lots. So when we're saying parking lots, does that include driveways? Is that, anyone know?
Not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've ever defined it.
I wouldn't imagine.
Strictly commercial, I would think.
I would imagine too.
I mean, if we're trying to conserve water, and people mow their lawn instead of sweeping their driveway, they use 1,500 gallons of treated water from Baybold's Big Pond. Can we not bring that back to committee and see if we can't include that in our
Well, one
in
of
our
the things,
water
for
ban
example,
or water conservation order?
the conservation order doesn't, for example, not allow you to wash your car in your driveway. So you can be in your driveway, and as long as you have a hose that has a nozzle that shuts off, and it's not just running water, you can wash your car. I would think that 99% of the people who would wash their car in their driveway will take their hose and wash down their driveway to the storm sewer. So I'm thinking that parking lot is meant strictly in a commercial sense. To ban washing down your driveway, I think would be extended to an actual water ban on use of it, as opposed to how it's used. That's
Wording will be challenged. But I know
But I know the point you're making, and I don't disagree with you.
Yeah,
It'll be interesting. It's an
something to discuss
exercise
at
I'd love the
committee.
committee to have a look at, just to see if there's
Perhaps we
something
could
we
bring
can
that
do
back
with
to
it.
committee and just,
Yeah.
discuss it, see if we can't come up with something. Because that is a huge waste of water. And
Unbelievable
If it's
waste.
trying to conserve water, I mean, I would love to see it included. If we can somehow, like you said,
Yeah.
deal with the exceptions of, of controlled washing of your cars. But it really bothers me when I see people wasting water to get, pebbles off their driveway or grass cuttings off their driveway. Anyways, it's a huge
Yeah.
waste of water.
I thank you. I'm going to, before I go to Councillor Ledwell to conclude, Councillor Tessier.
Well, to that effect, $15 at Canadian Tire will buy you one of those great big industrial brooms to sweep out your driveway, actually, which is what we've done. I wondered if we can do you have any information on what the water levels are right now? Because I know a couple of years ago we ended up with a significant water ban, and that was a real nuisance. We did not have one last year, thankfully, and I know that the conservation order is always in effect. But I'm curious about water levels at this point.
Councillor Aker, you serve on that board. Can you give us a bit of Last
Yeah.
I heard, they were really good.
They are really good. In fact, I'm going to quote a number here that may not be deadly accurate, but it's say between 35 and 38 feet. It's practically an all-time high, and it's been brought about by good conditions as well as the operation of the Water Conservation Order the last few years. In fact, at times, Newfoundland Power has had to spill a little bit of water out there for liability and safety reasons, but it's always been maintained at a high level. They have the right to access that pond because they use some of the water supply down the stream in Petty Harbour to generate power. But they have really, in recent years, responsibly used the water that's available in the pond. The Regional Water Committee, through the water conservation orders in every community, as well as the actions of residents to be cognizant of the fact that water is not free. It's not as abundant as we think it is, at least not in a treated sense. So it's at an all-time high, and that was reported to us 2 weeks ago at the latest Regional Water Committee.
But at an all-time high doesn't mean that everybody gets to go silly now with the
That's
hoses.
correct.
No, please don't.
That's correct. And no, nobody gets to go silly now. Councillor I'm sorry, did anybody else want to speak to it? Councillor Ledwell?
Thank you, Your Worship, and Deputy Mayor Locke will certainly take that back to committee and have a look at it. The second item that I have this evening is to do with hydrant use for car washes. Residents are reminded, of course, that the use of hydrant permit is required for any charity car wash events that will be ongoing within the city. The forms for this permit are available on the city's website or at any of the city's facilities. There is no fee for the permit. However, there is a requirement to have a written explanation or written confirmation that the proper equipment is being used, the proper connection to the fire hydrant. So again, just another alert for the public when it comes to water usage.
Thank you.
The third and final item on our agenda this evening has to do with the Capital Works program, the CP1. This is the Capital Works 2011 street upgrading. Basically, just to fulfill the requirements of the program, we do need to get a minute of council to show that the committee approves or the council approves the entering into the financial arrangement there. Basically, says the city is in receipt of the agreement document from the Provincial Department of Municipal Affairs for processing of the 2000 level Capital Works program. Street improvements, basically we've done under an agreement of 70-30 between the province and the municipal governments. The recommendation from the committee is that we recommend approval to enter into an agreement with the provincial government for a 70-30 cost sharing arrangement for the 2011 Capital Works program, and I so move.
It is moved and seconded. Question or comment? This is the one that's late, right? Yeah.
That's right.
All those in favor? Aye. Contrary-minded motion is carried. Next, I think it's, that concludes engineering, Councillor?
It does, Your Worship, yes.
Okay, next then is planning and land use. Mr. Aker, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just trying to get my notes here together now, because planning is like yay thick, and I've got to get it down to yay thin, right?
Yes.
Hopefully, I do a good job of that. Well, you'll let me know if I don't. So I got to find my notes here to get started. But I think we're going to start with the fence height on a high note. 120 and 118 Ashford Drive. Basically, councils, our regulations permit a fence to be 6 foot high. These two properties on Ashford Drive, they have the back fence line is along the trail system, I think, that follows Flynn's Brook in that area. And they sometimes find that basically they're having a bit of vandalism occurring. They're having rocks being thrown into their fence. So they've made application to the city and want council to consider if we would approve a 7-foot fence there. And really, we've done this before in the past. There is precedent for this, and I so move.
Seconded.
Moved, seconded by Councillor Ledwell. Questions or comments on anyone? All those in favor? Motion carried.
Now, the next item is a fairly big item, Your Worship. It's the Waterford River floodproofing study. And basically, we've been working with the residents. I know I got on council 3 years ago, and we've been meeting with them on a regular basis, primarily the group that's down in Forest Avenue, who've been experiencing flooding, sometimes in the spring, but typically in the fall of the year. So we engaged our engineering consultants to have a look at it, and the goal of the study was to look at floodproofing measures that might be put in place so that we could either eliminate or reduce the flood risk for dwellings that are within the 1 in 100 year flood zone. We weren't really looking at the buffer or any other high areas. So the study basically looked at several options, and they included we could raise the houses, which effectively would lift them off the ground. The flooding could still occur, but the land would be impacted, but not necessarily the property itself. We could relocate the houses. This has been done in other jurisdictions, pick up the house and move it somewhere else. These two options, raising the houses and relocating them, they don't turn out to be very practical, though, because these houses are fairly old. A lot of them were built in the 50s and the 60s. It's technically quite complex to either lift them and keep them on site or lift them and take them off site. There's environmental issues that could result. And at the end of the day, the raising the houses, the property's still going to flood. With the relocating of the houses, it's expensive to do, to move the houses. We also looked at two other options, which were building an artificial bank and dredging the river. And basically, technically, yes, you can do that, but they are extremely expensive to do. And there's no guarantee that once the river is dredged or once the banks are put up to keep the water out, there's no guarantee that the flooding won't resume. We could have a hurricane as bad or worse than Igor, despite all of our good plans and design and fair size investment of the city's tax dollars. The flooding could still end up impacting the houses. And the other option we looked at was purchasing the houses at market value. The consultant is recommending that we do that. The consultant looked at 6 houses which were in the 1 in 100 year floodplain. By purchasing the houses, the residents can go and buy a house somewhere else, wherever they'd like to go. We're not buying at replacement cost. We're just looking purely at market value. This will eliminate the flood risk to the owners of the houses. And we feel it's the most cost-effective way to reduce the flood risk. We're only focusing on Forest Avenue. It is the right thing to do, I think, in my view. These residents, every September, every time there's a bad storm, they don't sleep at night. They need to get out pumps. They don't know where they're going to be sitting tomorrow morning the next morning when they wake up in terms of cleaning up their houses and that. And we've had a good rapport back and forth with these residents over the last few times. So you see the report in front of you. I'd like to move the report, which includes as well, Your Worship, making
Hang on
offers.
1 second.
Whoops.
Just before you do that, because I
Yeah.
think you're about to make reference to item number 3.
Which will be
And
a
I'm going to ask.
particular house.
I'm going to ask that we have a note of caution here. I'm not sure that that's a motion we should make.
Which, sorry?
Item number 3, which ties into what you're about to do.
Yes.
While the motion you're about to do is perfectly acceptable in my view, I'm going to caution council for a moment that I think I would like to pull item 3 back.
Okay.
Only because I do believe there is a legal aspect to this about the release of proprietary and private information.
Yeah.
That may not be necessary, given that the public piece of this process dealing with individual homeowners is the universal budget allocation that we put in place. I'm not sure that we should be therefore having to approve, if you will, on an individual basis in the public context, the personal negotiation that we dealt with a private property owner. And I want a clarification on that before we engage. This is the first one
Yes.
of before we engage in that. So if council would if nothing else, and I'm completely out of my wits with this, fine, but would council humor me on this for the moment? I don't think it has any impact on the process other than there are privacy and proprietary implications both for the city and the property owners yet to come
Okay.
that I think we should be cautioned.
So we move the report.
But move the report, absolutely, and I know
which-
you were about to
yeah.
tie them together, which
Which-
is why I stopped you.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Well,
no, and I wasn't going to number
question.
3
Okay, I
quite right
wasn't
away.
sure.
But
Question.
what we'll do is we'll move the report, which includes approval for the city to make the offers to the homeowners.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And then we'll stop there at this point.
For
in
this
time.
point, that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm coming from.
And I so move.
All right, it is moved and it is seconded to accept the report and the recommendations, items 1 and 2 as listed. Councillor Stoyles.
You can vote on this one. What I had was the question on deferral. and what you were looking at deferral.
Well, let's
Yeah,
deal with that
deal
separate
that
then,
separate.
from that. On this particular matter, any other comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary-minded, motion is carried.
So item number 3 is deferred.
Can I have a question on that now?
You can
Mr.
indeed.
Deferral? I'm just wondering the process now, because I know of a couple of people, one person in Pacific is in the process of moving, and I'm assuming he's waiting for everything to go through. Is that going to delay?
No.
Okay.
I see no delay in this. This is not an issue of, this is not an issue of approval. This is an issue of release. This is an issue of, should this be information that is tabled in the public? And I would, my knee-jerk reaction is to argue that this is not information that should go public. Having said that, we'll get a legal opinion, I guess.
I would argue with you, Your Worship. For
I
example,
hear
a few
exactly
minutes
what you're
ago, we just approved a bunch of roads that are going to be paved.
Exactly.
We don't bring that back every time we pave each road or we pay out each bill. It gets approved in the payment register. I hear where you're coming from.
I can't help but think that because there's personal information involved here, that's the piece of this that I have a problem with. We're not negotiating a private road, right? Which would be, I think, would be a challenge for us when we're doing roads. This is, we're talking about, we've agreed and settled on a price to purchase a property. We've got 6 others we're going to purchase. I'm not sure that the individuals fully even realize themselves that this would become a topic of public discussion. And so that's why I asked for the deferral. That's all. For that reason only for the moment. Fair enough?
Yeah.
I'd like to check into it.
That makes sense.
Councillor Stoyles, are you content
I'm
with that?
fine.
It's
I'm
not
fine.
delaying
I'm
the
just-
process. That's the question.
No.
I was just concerned that it
Yeah,
would be
no.
delayed, because
No.
I know people
No,
are.
it has no impact on the
a couple of
process
people
at
are
all.
moving forward.
Yeah, no, we have an amount in our budget approved to undertake this initiative. So having to reapprove each individual one in a public forum is what I'm questioning, because I think it has impacts on every other negotiation we do. That's all.
If it turns out that we do indeed need to do that, we can just wrap it.
Oh, we'll just do it. That's, if that's the case, yeah. Fair enough?
Yeah. And what council does here today is basically approve the process. We
Correct.
don't get involved now
We
with
do
every
not.
negotiation that takes place.
No.
We've set up certain parameters. We've set up a process that the residents are now aware of.
Yeah.
The politics stay out of it. The staff now have the authority as well as the budget allocation to execute the motion.
Yeah, and that's the point.
All right?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. The next item, folks, is, I know I spoke about this in the roundtable last week, but this coming Saturday, we've got the Waterford River Cleanup Blitz.
Who's going to be with me?
I
Who's
know
gonna
I
be
will.
there?
I suspect Councillor Ledwell and
Out of town, out of town,
3
You're there.
will be there.
out of town.
Yeah. Yeah.
You there? So you meet.
Oh, I'll be there.
So
I'll
it's
be there.
Councillor Aker, Councillor Ledwell, and me. I got my green boots. You fellas got your
I
green
got boots. I'm not sure they're green.
That's what you need, right?
Yeah.
Your knee boots.
Yeah.
What do you call them?
Rubber
What's that
boots.
song? Jumped in the boot with your rubber boots on, is it? I got them. I'm ready to go.
Well, in fact, I had a discussion today with Julia, Julia Schwartz, our manager of planning, and this is about the river, right? It's convenient, I guess, we could go down and clean up the trail, which happens to follow the river, but the idea is to get on the river bank itself and do the cleanup there, right? You may recall that this blitz last year, this got launched primarily because we had some feedback, again, back to Forest Avenue.
Yeah.
Those residents were indicating to us that the river and its tributaries are full of junk, and this is one of the reasons why that the river doesn't flow like it used to many years ago. So we've initiated this. It's a small step forward, but it is a step forward. But Your Worship, your point is well taken. If you're coming down to clean up, expect to get a little bit wet. Now, we're not going to be wading in the river. I hope not anyway, at least I won't be, but I do intend to wear rubbers. It's 10 o'clock, we're going to meet here at City Hall. We've got I've gathered together some interested businesses, volunteers, and community groups to assist. But if you haven't heard of it till now, and you want to help out, all you got to do is contact Monica Storch at 748-1145, or come to City Hall. We'll supply the garbage bags, we'll supply the gloves and that kind of stuff. And we'll be happy to, around noon, Your Worship, perhaps you'll host the barbecue we have planned to reward all of our volunteers for all their hard work.
I'm going to spend 2 hours in a river and then I got to cook.
No, I'm thinking.
My wife is going to say I'm starting to act like her.
I think we're going to eat.
Because that's what she'd say to me. Hold on, 2 hours in a river and now I got to cook.
Now, and the other piece that we're going to be announcing too is the green team,
Yeah,
which will
have we got
focus as
approval?
well. As far as I know, everything is in order. It's all approved, and we're going to be getting 4 students from the
Excellent.
Conservation
Again,
Corps of Canada,
super.
which I understand little moment of reflection here, because I heard something on the radio this morning. They don't get any federal funding. Not a penny. Now,
No.
they do get some provincial funding, from
Yes.
what I understand, through AES, right?
I
So
thought they
they're
did,
not at
by the
all
way, last year.
impacted.
I thought it was federal money behind that.
Yeah, no.
No, it
They're
turns
not
out
at all
that- no.
impacted by the federal cuts, and I couldn't be happier. And this is going to be a nice little cleanup. So we'll start on Saturday, and then July and August we'll have 4 students who'll be working not so much the river itself, but tributaries up in Powers Pond, Flynn's Brook, and Terrett's Brook. But again, all for the same cause, and that's for the information of council.
I think that's wonderful. I hope a lot of people are going to turn out with us, Councillor Aker.
I do too.
Councillor Tessier.
In the news lately, we're hearing a lot about indiscriminate dumping, and last year I know that we were really quite surprised with the items that we took out of the riverway. I know that we found car wrecks and appliances and all kinds of fun stuff like that. So this year, yeah, trampoline, that's right.
Yep.
So hopefully this year they'll see a reduction in how much waste is actually along the riverway. I mean, it would, logic would tell you that I think that some of the bigger items are gone. If by chance we determine that we do have a lot of larger items, then maybe we need to do another, investigation of sorts about dumping in our own municipality, because, it's an issue everywhere. I know that we all see it. And I'm, a car wreck, it was very, very funny when someone was pulling on a wire and it was attached to a radiator or something last year. So I think it'll be a great measurement tool this year, I think, to see if we actually do have problems like that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Councillor? Anybody else want to comment on this item? Are we moving on, Councillor Aker, or are you still on this item?
A little bit. I'm dragging
Still
this
on
out. I
this
just want to
item?
show you. I just want to show you the poster, right? Basically, that the city staff have done up is very nice. If you see this poster, basically, it's promoting the Blitz, and you may notice that we have a couple of sponsors. One is Tim Hortons, and the other is the City of Mount Pearl. And in addition to coordinating it, the city will also be providing some of the related support. So if we get the bags of garbage all picked up, we're going to lay them on the trailway. The city will come by with, hopefully that we'll only need pickup trucks and not dump trucks, and we'll pick up the stuff. And of course, the city will be doing the same thing this summer in support of the green team as well, right?
Excellent.
And listen,
excellent.
Councillor Tessier is quite right. Sorry about that. You could be hauling anything out of that riverbank. We're on a first name basis sometimes, Your Worship. Paula Tessier. Councillor Tessier is quite right. I had a call the other day from somebody in the Masonic who told me there was a car wreck up by the Masonic.
There is actually on the corner. I've actually sent something
It's an
about
old
that.
wreck that's been there for
About a
years.
month ago.
I sent an email too.
Yeah.
Is the wreck removed? It was on my mind. I had to bring it
I
up.
didn't see it. I went by there yesterday, but I didn't see it.
Yeah.
That's not to say
That's a good
I
sign.
wasn't looking for it.
Maybe
So
staff can follow up, Your Worship.
It's right down on the corner, as you go right down the end of the corner. It's
Left.
removed. Jason says it's gone. Good.
Yeah.
Anybody else
Mostly
with
on
a comment
websites.
on this? Councillor Ledwell? No? We're going to see you with your rubber boots on.
You will indeed. I'd certainly like to join with both you guys in encouraging as many residents and community groups to get out and participate in this. It's a very worthwhile initiative, as Councillor Aker and Councillor Tessier have said, and looking forward to it.
We should have the cleanest urban river in the nation, and the only thing in it should be fish. That's what we should be trying to achieve. Anyway, move on, Councillor. Sorry. Oh, look, they even had a copy of the thing in our box here.
Yeah,
Ah.
absolutely. The next item, Your Worship, has to do with rescinding of not so much an order, I guess it was a council, I think it was 2 meetings ago, refused an occupancy permit for 1 Riverview Avenue.
Right.
This is a case of you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can operate a business there, but if you do, you have to sign up and you have to pay taxes. In this particular case, the business was dropped from the tax rolls because we were led to believe that the business was no longer operating. And then our 6-month rule kicked in about non-conforming businesses, so naturally council then refused to renew a non-conforming use which had lapsed. So basically this information now has come to us, we've straightened it out. My motion is to rescind the refusal and to approve an occupancy permit for Payless Tire at 1 Riverview Avenue, and I so move.
So we're basically saying that Payless Tire has been there all along.
That's correct, Your Worship.
But they didn't pay taxes? Is that the question?
That they weren't caught in the tax
They
roll?
weren't. They weren't.
Fell in the
Like,
tax
I
roll.
understand the municipal assessment agency. The municipal assessment agency assessed them, and is that what I understand?
No, they would assess the building owner,
They will
not
assess
the
the bill.
business
That's
in it.
what I was going to say.
Yeah, they wouldn't
So,
necessarily be aware of
Did
the
they pay
business.
taxes and did the 6 months lapse? Then were we in the right?
Apparently not. Mr. Silver, some information?
Yeah, Payless Tire actually wasn't operating there continuously. It was another business that was operating at that location. What had happened there was that the municipal assessment agency, whose role is really to assess properties within the city on our behalf, removed all businesses at that location from the tax roll. That was actually done in error. There is one business that's been operating at that location continuously, which of course means that the non-conforming use continued throughout that 2-year period. We in fact had not billed taxes because of the fact that those businesses were removed from the tax roll, but that's being taken care of actually as we speak, and we're back billing for 2 years for that particular business.
So
And of course, we're not going to issue the permit till that bill is paid. Is that?
I was going to ask if they had an occupancy permit to be in there to operate.
No, well, wait now. Payless Tire is the new business going in. That's not the business that was occupying the property and operating it. So it has to do with the former business owner.
Okay, so are we going to be able to collect the taxes of the business that was there? Yes?
Do we know for sure?
Yes, we've been in contact with the business. We've advised we're going to bill for those last couple of years. We've indicated that that's not an issue. The taxes actually are not incredibly high for that particular business that was operating. So we don't anticipate it's going to be an issue.
Okay, so we're rescinding an order, and then we obviously have to bring in another motion to approve something. Okay, we're starting with the rescinding.
I'll move the rescinding first.
Okay, and that's council minute number 268. It is moved and seconded. All in favor? Contrary minded? Okay, motion is carried.
And I take from that, Your Worship, that Payless now have applied for an occupancy permit. There is no non-conforming use issue, so therefore
it doesn't even come to
we
us
as a
now.
council,
Doesn't even come
I
to
don't
us
have
now.
to motion that. That would just go forward.
I have you. Thank you very much. Anybody else with a question or comment before we move on? Moving on, that's,
It's interesting.
well, you know,
Doesn't happen very often.
let me tell you, I understand where Councillor Stoyles is coming from, I think, and I'm totally appreciative. It's disappointing. I want to do something on that road, and it ain't this. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I agree with you.
All right, go ahead.
More on that in committee, Your Worship.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, 12 Coruscant Avenue, or Drive, I should say, we have a buildings line setback variance. This area, this property is zoned light industrial, where the permitted setback is a requirement of 15 meters. The proponent has asked for a 10% variance to move the setback forward 13.5 meters, and we can approve this according to our policies, and of course it's subject to public consultation, which included the usual things of advertising in the telegram, notifying, in this case, 38 property owners, and scheduling a briefing session. We had absolutely no feedback, especially no negative feedback on this issue, and the rationale to approve, Your Worship, would be, look, it's in keeping with the proper development of the neighborhood. There's no previous variances. We're not extending any nonconformity here, and really there's no compelling reason not to approve this, and I so move.
Moved, seconded. Questions, comments? All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
Next item is 7 Panther Place, which is also zoned light industrial, where the permitted height of the building is 15 meters. Council has discretion to approve building heights above 15 and less than or equal to 23 meters, and that's what the proponent is applying for. Again, because it's a discretionary approval of council, we went through a public consultation process whereby 26 of the property owners, and the usual song and dance associated with the public consultation. No objections were received. The rationale to approve here is, look, there's no residences nearby, no residential housing. It's going to be consistent with the look and feel of all the other buildings. There's no impact on the view plane, no excessive shadowing. And much like the previous one, there really is no reason not to approve it. I wonder maybe if staff should have the discretion to approve up to 23 meters. I think we've had a couple of these now in the last month or so, and I think we'll take that back to
That's
committee.
something for the committee to come back with and make a recommendation on.
But in the meantime, I so move.
Moved, seconded. Question or comment? All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carried.
The next item, Your Worship, I just want to give council an update on the hillside development.
How are we doing there?
Well, we're making a bit of progress. As you recall, we approved this in 2009, but unfortunately the original developer fell into financial difficulty. And ultimately they had developed part of the subdivision. Then the company, as far as I know, went under and went into receivership. And then the property was put up for sale. The city actually used some of the security that was provided to us to ensure that there was no safety issues up there, you know, by making sure that all the channelways for the water coming off the hill were all open and that. and generally it was safe to the public. A company called Leopard Canada has now taken over that property, and they intend to develop it a little bit differently than the original property owner. The original property owner, as I understand, this was slightly before my time on council, was going to be trying to, because the lots were going to be fairly big up there, was going to try to retain as much of the trees as possible. Now the area 1A, that's for sale now and was primarily developed by the first developer, didn't have a lot of trees on it anyway. There was a lot of open space there. So it's been frustrating for some of the neighbors and frustrating, I guess, for us as a council to see that property just sit there. But we've begun to issue occupancy permits, and if you go up there now, you'll find that several of the lots have actually had basements in them. So they seem to be moving along. They've changed their approach. They're not going to be developing the lots. They're going to be subbing them out to contractors who will build and then sell the houses to homeowners. There's a great big, large detention pond along Black Marsh Road, which has been quite the eyesore the last couple of years. They've had to put a fence around it. I think that's a sound idea to make sure people can't get in there. This pond is required to ensure that the Waterford River and Branscom's Pond, which is downstream, doesn't get overloaded with too much water during a rainstorm. As we speak today, the sods are being laid, and I think you're going to find that the area around that detention pond is going to look a lot cleaner in the next few days. And with our spring now happening the way it has so far, good summer's ready to set in. Sod should take pretty quickly. Going forward, I think the developer is reviewing where they're taking future phases of the development. They may have a slightly different approach, probably similar to the traditional approach that you see in all the other city subdivisions, where, again, lots are built, typically cleared. A contractor comes in, options or purchased a lot, and then sells that to a homeowner, right? So I think the hillside development that we'd all envisioned when it got approved may not it'll still look like a hillside. It may not be as green in the short run, but I'm confident that in the long run, as people move in, plant trees, lay down the lawns, it'll look as green as we can make any other subdivision here in Mount Pearl. And I just wanted to bring that to council's attention for your information.
There was
There's landscaping regulations don't actually have to bring a certain number of
Yes.
shrubbery and tree anyway.
the neighbors who contacted us, because there was a number of emails that went around from, I guess, all of council and the staff. I'm just wondering if those neighbors have been contacted, because they had some concerns about the traffic and the look of the fence and how long it was going to be there and if it was going to be permanent and all that kind of stuff. I'm just wondering, if they had been contacted, if they haven't been, if they will be contacted, just make a note, because I know it was one specific neighbour that had sent out a bunch of emails on a couple of different topics, and it'd be nice to make sure that she's been notified. And it is a commercial. I mean, they are working on it, and there's development in progress, and hopefully in the next year, it's like we did Park Avenue. I mean, it takes time when you're doing things like that.
Yeah, no, I agree, Councillor Stolz. This came up at committee, and even though we only had one feedback from one resident, I think, on Gadwell Place, we suspected that this might be on other people's minds.
Yes.
So we decided, coming out of committee, basically, to table this information today. And this would, I know that particular resident has been responded to. I'm not sure by staff, but I know by some members of council. We'll use this briefing as the update, basically, for any other residents
Can we send a letter to all the neighbours over? I mean, it's only 15 of them, 12 or 15 homes in that little cul-de-sac there. The rest of the neighbours, especially, there's only Pacific in that, because there's only cul-de-sac off of going Black Marsh Road, and a lot of them certainly have some concerns.
Would you mind if we take that back to committee?
Sure.
just to
Have a
review,
look at it.
because the area phase 1A, I'll call it, I think is proceeding almost exactly as the original developer had planned. The issue is going to come about when we go to the next phase of the development. And I think what you're suggesting, Councillor Stoyles,
Just
is
like
that
to know
maybe
what's
there's be some public consultation. I'm not sure how much input we would be able to allow, but I think that's what was done the previous time
That's what was
when
done.
this got launched, right?
The next phases will be a little further west anyway.
I won't be
And up
affecting
the
them
hill,
as much.
yeah, and up the hill, right?
I want her to touch base with them all and let them know what's
I think the
Yeah,
neighbors
I
are frustrated
would-
by the pace of development here, which has been extremely slow.
I would weigh in though and say that, a little note, it's 15 houses, it's 15 residents, basically. A little note updating them on the progress. wouldn't
Wouldn't
really
hurt.
be a bad thing to do.
What's wrong with a bit of communication?
What's wrong with a bit of communication?
All right, good
so
enough.
I'd invite the committee, as Councillor Soils has said, take it back, have a look at it, but I'd applaud us doing that, whenever we get a chance to
Good PR.
provide a little information, the better. But anyway,
All
carry
right,
on,
thank
Councillor,
you.
sorry.
Yep, the next item is related to the Eastern Region Appeal Board, and this has to do with the property at 1082 Topsail Road, where this is a residential property, but there were some trailers which were being used. These are storage containers, I should say, being used at the back of property for commercial purposes. We issued an order basically to have the trailers removed. The owner of the property appealed our decision, but when the appeal went forward, there was no basis given for the appeal. So basically, for the information of council, the appeal board has said basically they've dismissed the appeal because they didn't provide any rationale, but the appellant didn't provide any reasons for the appeal, and that's for the information of council. Now, I have a notice of motion next, Your Worship. In accordance with Section 39 of the City of Mount Pearl Act 1988, take notice that in accordance with Council's public notification policy, I will, at a regular meeting of Council, move an amendment to the text of the Mount Pearl Development Regulations 2010 that, if enacted, will 1. In Section 6.2.2A4, accessory building residential, delete the section and replace with the following. With the exception of radio and television antenna, an accessory building shall have a maximum height of 3.5 meters. In Part 2, in Section 6.2.4H, accessory buildings non-residential, delete the section and replace with the following. With the exception of radio and television antenna, an accessory building shall have a maximum height of 3.5 meters. The purpose of this amendment is to bring in line the building height standard of accessory buildings in the development regulations from 4.5 meters to 3.5 meters, and to ensure that the definition of building height is consistent with the definition as outlined in the ministerial regulations. I have another notice of motion, Your Worship. In accordance with Section 39 of the City of Mount Pearl Act 1988, take notice that in accordance with Council's public notification policy, I will, at a regular meeting of Council, move an amendment to the Mount Pearl Development Regulations 2010 that, if enacted, will amend Map 1 Land Use Zoning Map as follows. Rezone the property, a 885 Topsail Road, from utility to commercial mixed use zone. The intention of this proposed amendment is to provide Council with the authority to consider a bank at this property. And the next item, Your Worship, is the development permit list for the period May 14th to 25th. You see before you permits numbers 28 29, and I so move.
Moved, seconded. Question?
Number
Councillor Soils?
Number 29, Your Worship, I believe that's one of the items that I didn't support, and I don't know I've just got a question actually. When you vote against something and it comes up then to release the permit, do I need to vote against the permit being released as well? I'm just asking the question. How does it work? Because I'm assuming this is the one that I voted against. This is the old Smallwood Arena, and I didn't support the motion that went forward. And I'm just wondering, do I need to vote against the permit? I'm just asking the question.
I would interpret the rules this way, that when you voted against the motion on whether or not the project would go ahead,
Okay.
you voted against the project moving forward. You lost the vote. So the project is now moving forward.
So they're getting their permit?
Yeah, so the issue then of whether or not, once approval to move forward has been given, it's no longer necessary,
To vote
unless you
against.
wish to, for you to keep voicing your objection to the original initiative by saying, well, I'm going to vote no on absolutely everything.
No,
that's going,
I
you know what I'm
just
saying?
I'm
Yeah.
asking a question.
It's not necessary, but if you wanted to continue to have the record show your continued opposition to that initiative,
Well, I will.
by all means say, I'm going to vote no
So
to
can
the
you bring them out in two
acceptance
separate
of the development
motions?
permit.
Two separate permits? Because there's only two there.
There's only two there.
So don't table them twice, and I will.
Move the development permit list, item number 8, it is moved, and item number 28, it is moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Item development permit, item number 29,
I so
moved and seconded. All in favor?
Nay.
Contrary minded, note Councillor Stoyles votes nay.
Do you want to say anything?
I think that's straightforward
Thank
enough.
you. Thank you.
No, Smallwood Arena. 126 Smallwood.
That's not Smallwood? That's the multiplex? I'm sorry.
How's
So,
it the multiplex on Smallwood?
how is the
Oh, it's
multiplex?
on Small, the extension. I think you needed to say that.
Okay, because it didn't
Okay.
say that. That's
So
why
will we
it
go
said-
back to moving 20?
No, they're both accepted, so it's
They
fine.
both accept-
Just withdraw her objection.
Withdraw my objection.
Move on to the building construction.
Civic address?
All right. Residential permits for the period May 14th to the
You wanna do
25th.
it?
Yeah, that's true. You're
That's
right.
right.
Yeah, good pickup there, CAO.
No, when
And
that's
they
wrong.
are
It was moved on in the
$2,093,680, and I so move.
Moved, seconded. Deputy Mayor.
Orchard, it should be.
I think it's Orchard.
I see it's Orchard.
I don't think we have an Orchid.
You should write the residents, and they have no fear.
Did you overlook an orchid while searching for a rose?
Dun, 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 dun.
Well, it's a great country song, guys. Mickey Gilley, come on. How old are these? Andrew, you didn't know any of that, did you?
I vaguely remember something about it.
That is a pop culture reference from the 60s.
I have motions, Your Worship.
Moving on.
Not emotions, but motions.
All those in favor. Contrary-minded motion is carried.
Commercial development or building permits for the same period, $223,990, and I so move.
Also to be included in the original motion. All in favor? Motion carried.
I'm done. Thank you, sir.
We are up to new business. Country-minded. You fellas got a little problem with a little country music? Little Mickey Gilley on the piano. I overlooked an orchid while searching for a rose.
You're good.
Hey, my sins shall find me out. We're up to new business. We're going back to you, Councillor Aker.
I have three things, Your Worship.
Yep.
I attended the Mount Pearl Minor Hockey AGM last Thursday night, and an issue that came up had related to, it was from the Hockey Dads, and they rent out the Reed Center, for example, every New Year's Eve. It's quite the big fundraiser for them. Their question was basically, when we start the multiplex now in the next few days, their question was, will there be any extended closures of the Reed Center? And I know under the previous plan that we had, from the original tender, we were looking at a 2 or 3 month period where it might close. Under this one, where we're basically building a building next to an existing building and then tying it in, there basically should not be, I won't say no disruption in the Reed Center's operation. There could be small little breaks, but basically there's no big long-term planned shutdown, is there?
No.
And have the user groups or been notified of that? Is that necessary at this point in time? I guess basically they're taking rentals, are they, all the way through?
Jason?
Your Worship, there's been several meetings with the contractor, and there will be a couple of, I guess, minor disruptions at certain points tying things in. But actually, the contractor is very reasonable to work with, and they're actually going to start the site up top, the paving, after the big track and field event, which is June 16th. So they're working quite well with this.
Okay. So we're not going to have, one of the advantages of our initiative where we had to downsize was that, in fact, we won't have to have an extended closure of the Reed Center. So hopefully the Hockey Dads aren't going to run into a problem.
No. And the other comment I made to them was, like, New Year's Eve, we will not be shutting in. Like that's not a time the contractor would be working anyway. But there was a little bit of a bigger issue, I guess, in terms of bookings going forward, with the Reed Center. Okay. The other thing I attended last week was the blind games, of which certain components, namely the bowling and the track and field, were held here in Mount Pearl. And I just wanted to say congratulations to Bill Royal. Bill lives here in Mount Pearl, and he collected, as he told me last night, 9 ribbons, which means he participated in 9 events. And he walked away with a plaque. He had the high triple for all of Canada in bowling. So I just want to say congratulations to Bill. Well done, right?
Bill does.
He has done marvelous, yeah.
The final thing is, several weeks ago, I was approved to go to the FCM conference this coming weekend, and for other work reasons I cannot attend, so I just want to bring that to Council's attention. I don't know if it requires a motion, but I'm taking back the approval, I guess, so to speak. That's it, Your Worship. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Tessier?
A couple of very quick items. We were talking about water consumption earlier, and I should have brought this up at the time, but quite frankly, it never came to me. Back when we were a couple of years ago when we did have the ban, and even last year when we were talking about it as well, talking about conservation, the question was raised, are commercial landscaping companies using treated potable drinking water in their trucks when they're landscaping private and commercial places?
Yes.
I'm wondering if that's necessary. We have so many other waterways that could probably be accessed. Why take water that you could safely drink
Oh, no, they take it out
and
of the Powers Pond.
put it on grass?
They took it out of Powers Pond.
Yeah, but I'm asking even outside of water ban times, if this is really a practice, right now, why can't we look at changing the regulations for something like that? I mean, of course they're going to need to access water to run their business, of course. But I'm wondering if it's necessary to use water that has been treated to just water lawns.
I think they take it out of Powers.
Anyway, it's a question.
You make a very good point. I'd love to get the committee view of it, and given that all of these businesses are not limited to dealing with just one municipality, we would almost need that to be a regional initiative, I think, to have everybody say, fine, we're all gonna see to it that we're gonna ban the use of potable water by these companies. But everybody would have to do that, so I think it needs some investigation.
Yeah.
I don't particularly disagree with what you're saying. I think it makes a lot of sense.
I'm just not sure.
We should have a look at it.
Yeah, I'm just not sure it's necessary. I mean, that's water you can drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Public Works, would this go to Public Works?
It would go to engineering, I believe, Your Worship.
Engineering?
And we'll certainly have a look at it.
There you go, it's
Bring
yours.
back- We're going to have a look at the driveway issue that the Deputy Mayor raised earlier, so we're certainly going to
Have a look at that as well. I think that's
Your Worship?
make a very good point.
Yeah,
Councilor Raker?
at the Regional Water Committee, Landscape Newfoundland Labrador is consulted with some of these decisions. So we not only seek their input, I guess when carving up or determining what a ban would be versus an order, but maybe that's something that the committee can consult with Landscape Newfoundland Labrador, because
I think it's a
agree.
really good idea. Yeah,
Boy, if you could
it's
just
worth
dump
exploring.
your hose into Powers Pond and fill up, well, why not?
Why
As
not?
opposed to Babel's Big Pond.
As opposed to, like you say,
That's
as
right.
opposed to using, potable water,
That's right. I mean,
yeah.
and that's not to have, certainly not intended to have a negative impact on any landscaping companies. Of course, they need to operate, and they're a viable, fabulous, wonderful resource. I'm just wondering, if it's necessary for them to be
Let's
using drinking
investigate
water.
it. I like the idea.
I also received a phone call from somebody. Now, we're back into the season of wonderful things that we all get to enjoy during good weather, and fire pits being one of them. And I know that my family, we actually enjoy a fire pit regularly because it's important for us to enjoy it and for our neighbors to not be negatively impacted. It's important that we follow the fire pit regulations, which we do have. And I received a phone call from somebody who was concerned with what was being burned, the amount of smoke, a little bit of the wind that was carrying the smoke over to her property. And I just want to remind the residents that we do have regulations, and they're fairly strict about where your fire pit can be, what you can burn, when you can burn it. And it's really important that we follow the regulations in order for us to be able to safely enjoy fire pits. And that's the key word, enjoy them. Because they can be a wonderful family activity, but when it's abused and when the regulations aren't followed, it creates a problem for people, not just nuisance-wise, but even health-wise for some people. So it's responsible use of fire pits. It's really important that we definitely acknowledge the regulations, follow them, respect our neighbors, definitely make sure that it's safe and that it doesn't intrude on anybody else's ability to live a comfortable life on the weekends if you're having a fire pit. And so I just wanted to make that reminder to people again, because we will have to come, if you're not following regulations, we will have to come and put your fire out.
Absolutely.
We don't want to do it. So,
Thank you.
that's it.
Deputy Mayor.
I just have one question, Your Item, or one question, Your Worship. I know I spoke with Director Antle about, a resident asked me to bring this up today, about some of the spillage into Flynn's Brook. And I know you sent around an email about, has there been anything further on that as to what exactly the substance was in the river? Has it been cleaned up? Any remediation that's been taking place? If the Director could comment on that, Your Worship.
Mr. Rattle?
Yes, there's a couple of spills this past week or so. Well, one is to do with the one I understand a few years back.
Yeah, well, only about a year and a half ago.
Okay, it was only that long ago. Some more substance was occurring on the surface there. We reported that to Government Services, or Service Newfoundland Labrador, to investigate, and they've been investigating, and that's underneath their wing right now. I've seen some emails from them only today that says there was either non-detect or very low amounts they were finding in the monitoring wells up there around North Atlantic. There was some surface there in those detention ponds that they created. You can't really say that was coming from either the North Atlantic side or it could be coming from a catch basin. So, but it was very low amounts, and they were captured in the boom up there. The one that's down off Sunrise in Flensburg, you say, because I wasn't sure of the name of that stream there. That's been traced back to a private residence. And I went by there actually yesterday morning, and they were actually remediating around the residence when I was by there. And again, we've got booms put up down there, and they've contacted an environmental consultant to actually do remediation and protect the brook. So that's that's been reported to Service Newfoundland and Labrador. They're also monitoring that as well.
Good. Thank you very much, because we were concerned, in particular for me, was the issue surrounding the one at Powers Pond that we were having a repeat. That one was a bad spill, as you know. But have we by the way, was the person who notified us, Mr. Shaw? Did you have contact with him?
We had contact with him. We had contact.
That's what I mean. We did. We contacted him, and he's fully aware of what's going down.
You can almost count on Randy to bring it forward.
That's wonderful. Yeah, the other Randy. No, he watches this stuff, and that's good on him, I say. Councillor Stoyles.
Yes, I have a couple of things. First of all, I'd like for us to send a letter to Mayor Woody French. Woody is now the chair of the Atlantic Mayors, and the next meeting will be in CBS in mid-September. And I'd like for us to, like I said, send him a letter. Last week, myself and Councillor Claire Tilley attended Mary Queen of the World. We did several schools up there, and they had invited us up to speak and talk about municipal politics, and Blair certainly spoke about the municipal part of it relating to the traffic and municipal police and things like that. So it was quite interesting. Thank you to Blair for doing that. And also we had our regional meeting in Hearts Content this past weekend, and we had over 40 municipal towns on the Avalon represented, and it was good to see so many people out. We talked about the ICSPs and a lot of other initiatives. Waste management came up. Actually, they had an emergency meeting in Old Perlican last night. I didn't get to it last night because I had another commitment here in town, but I know that there is still some dump sites on the Avalon still open, and they had concerns about that. But overall, it was a good weekend, and thank you to all those who came out.
Thank you so much. Councillor Ledwell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a couple of items here myself. First of all, as a member of the Northeast Avalon Regional Economic Development Board, and of course the alternate on the city's Economic Development, Communication and Tourism Committee, I just want to make the public aware that the city was very disappointed to learn that, of course, the Regional Economic Development Boards are no longer, or their funding is going to be cut from the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, of course, a COA, as is known to most people. A COA won't be providing core funding to the boards past May 31st, 2013. The Northeast Avalon Regional Economic Development Board is going to be meeting in short order. Actually, a special meeting of the board has been called tomorrow afternoon to discuss what our future action, I guess, is going to be in terms of these cuts and how the reaction is going to go with this. In the meantime, the city is pleased that Municipalities Newfoundland and Labrador, known the most by MNL, they have advised that they're going to look forward to working with federal and provincial governments to come up with some solutions as to funding arrangements or what have you. I know they've requested meetings with Minister Valcourt and the Provincial Minister of Innovation, Business and Rural Development, Keith Hutchings, just to reiterate the municipalities' needs for support and coordination when it comes to economic development activities. So just wanted to make the public aware that we're meeting tomorrow, and of course voice our disappointment on behalf of the city. Your Worship.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Aker, you wish to address that?
Yeah, I know where Councillor Ledwell's come from, because I also, before he came on council, I served on the board. For the cities like Mount Pearl and St. John's, we have our own economic development departments. But for those communities that are not big enough, and typically these are in the rural parts of not only the Avalon Peninsula, but all the way across the province, this is their economic development department. They share it with other communities, but it is their economic development. I think it's a real slap in the face to rural Newfoundland and Labrador. We sit on the board. We're there primarily to provide, we're not there to provide funding, we provide support to all the surrounding communities in next door to St. John's and Mount Pearl. I think the boards work rather effectively, and I don't know what they're going to be able to do from an economic development point of view without the federal funding, so I'm very disappointed too. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, I think that's I don't know if there's anything we need to say other than that is certainly the city's official position. that you know, we're somewhat disappointed in this. I admit that this particular zone is much more adequately represented in areas of economic development than a lot of other zones. And the argument could be made, you know, that perhaps we didn't need the board to the degree that other communities need it. But I think there's a recognition, as you say, Councillor, that in rural areas of the province in particular, these boards represented the only significant, straightforward economic development thrust that they actually had. So losing the board for them is going to be much more difficult than it will be on us. Having said that, I think we have to be a part of the army, right? Because we're going to say, well, you know, we don't like it, it's not going to hurt us as bad as you, so let's carry. I don't think that can be our position. So I applaud M&L, certainly for the position they've taken. And if they attempt to make any kind of an action at all, where our support is required, Councillor Ledwell and Councillor Stoyles, who serves on the board, let them know that Mount Pearl is behind them.
We certainly will.
Any other
Thank you,
items?
Worship. I'll certainly pass
Anybody
along
else
the
want to
city's
comment on
We-
that, though?
Would we motion that? We don't need a motion.
I don't
on
think we
that.
need the motion. That's just
I think
by
council's behind
consensus
that
we
all
do
the way.
that.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'll certainly pass along council's support in the matter. Just three other items very quickly, sir. I want to make mention of the Focus on Youth Awards that have occurred since our last council meeting, of course, back on May 17th. A spectacular show once again this year. Kudos to our staff, most notably Mr. Gary Fraser, our youth coordinator, who does such a fantastic job every single year with this show. Also, all of the other staff members that helped, the volunteers that assisted that night in making the show a very large success. Congratulations certainly to all the winners. You know, there's too many to name, but I know that I was certainly very proud of the young people in our city that night. You know, I always think back in 1999 when I was a winner at the Focus on Youth Awards, and think about how much the show has changed and how far we've come with the show ever since that. So, you know, certainly it's very impressive to note that, and a class act all around.
Yes, sir.
I also want to make mention of Special Olympics Mount Pearl. Just this past weekend, Special Olympics Mount Pearl partnered with their sister club, I guess, in CBS to host the provincial Special Olympics bowling games, I guess you'd call it. There were 8 regions participating from around the province, hundreds of athletes. By all accounts, everything went well. I had the opportunity to go out on Saturday out to Riverdale Lanes and CBS and present some medals for some of the athletes there. And as usual with the Special Olympics athletes, there was a lot of fun in the room, a lot of cheer, and certainly they epitomized fair play. So it was certainly a wonderful event, and I congratulate the executive of Special Olympics Mount Pearl for putting together all the logistics for all those athletes from the 8 regions across the province for coming in and being a part of that event. Certainly a job well done. And finally, I just want to make mention very quickly of the Knights of Columbus here in the city. The Father John B. Kent Council is wrapping up another year of great work here in the city. Of course, you know, a lot of volunteer hours and a lot of dollars get donated to various charities from the Knights of Columbus, and in particular the Father John B. Kent Council. I just want to congratulate the current Grand Knight, Jerome White, who led his current executive to a great year, and also congratulate the incoming Grand Knight-elect, I guess, Mr. Mike Huzzy, who was elected on Sunday night past, and congratulate all the other executive members who, you know, thankfully brought forward their talents and their skills to make the council even better. I know they'll continue to do great work in Mount Pearl.
Amen to that. That concludes new business. On that note, then, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Tessier. We stand adjourned.